Welcome to Chrono Cast. I'm Cato Freeman, and today we're stepping back, way back, to the year 1776.
And I'm Ruth Hadley. Yes, 1776, a year that, for many, is only spoken of in terms of grand battles and declarations. But we aim to, well, look beyond that.
Exactly, because while the soldiers were fighting, folks were still living, right? Trying to make sense of everything. What was it actually like for the civilians, for people like us during that pivotal year?
Precisely. We'll explore the daily lives, the quiet hardships, the small moments of hope that often get, overlooked in the grand narratives of war. It's about the echoes of what happened, not just on the battlefield, but in every home and village. And speaking of homes and villages, friend Cato, that's really where the war hit folks hardest, wasn't it? Daily life, it wasn't some grand adventure for most. It was, well, just precarious.
Precarious is a kind word, Miss Ruth. From what I saw and still see, most people were just trying to get by day to day. A lot of folks, they were still out in the country, just farming enough to feed their own families. Subsistence, they called it.
Yes, subsistence farming. My neighbors, bless their hearts, they were so reliant on what they could pull from the earth. But then you had the British blockades, didn't you?
Oh, those blockades, they really choked things off, didn't they? You'd see ships just sitting or not even coming in, nothing getting through or very little. It wasn't just about luxuries either. It was like basic necessities.
No, absolutely not. Trade just, it practically ceased, and that meant everything got scarce and dear. I remember folks struggling to find even simple things like salt or needles, things we took for granted.
And the money. I mean, the continental currency, it was just, well, it became worthless. I saw people trying to pay for food with a handful of notes, and the baker would just shake his head. Worthless, he'd say. I can't eat paper.
It created so much uncertainty, didn't it? Not just about supplies, but about everything. You couldn't plan for tomorrow or even for the next week. You woke up and you hoped.
Right. And then there was the constant worry about soldiers, too, on either side. Who would take your crops? Who would commandeer your livestock? It was a struggle to just exist sometimes. Never mind fight a revolution. It was just a brutal, brutal time for common folks. It was. And that brutality, it wasn't just in what folks faced, but who they faced it with or against.
Oh, yes, the divisions. That was that was almost as painful as the blockades sometimes. To see neighbors, even families, torn apart by loyalty.
Torn apart. That's the word. I mean, you'd hear talk, wouldn't you? Some folks, what, 40, maybe 45%, they called themselves patriots. They truly believed Britain had just violated their rights, that independence was the only way.
And for them, it felt like a matter of conscience, a deeply held conviction. They spoke of natural rights, of tyranny, and in their eyes, the fight was just.
But then you had the others, didn't you? The loyalists, a good number of them too, 15, maybe 20%. They still held fast to the crown, thought it was madness, all this talk of revolution.
They did. And for many of them, it wasn't about being unfeeling or unpatriotic, just patriotic to a different vision. They feared chaos, feared what would become of us without the king's stability. I often heard them say, better the devil you know.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where things got messy, real messy. Because if your neighbor was a loyalist and you were a patriot or vice versa, Well, suddenly the simplest interaction became loaded. Could you trust them? Would they report you?
And vice versa. The suspicion, the quiet accusations. I've seen friendships shatter over a whispered word about someone's allegiance. You'd walk into a public house and the room would just split. People kept to those they trusted, shared their view, safe for them.
It was like two nations forming right there in the same village, wasn't it? On the same street. You'd have a family, maybe the father was a patriot, and his son, God help him, was a loyalist. How do you even sit at the same table then? How do you break bread?
Ugh, the heartache of it. And for us as Quakers, it was a constant balancing act to try and maintain our peace testimony, to help all who needed it, regardless of their uniform or their cause. But even that was, well, misinterpreted sometimes.
I can only imagine. It felt like everyone had to pick a side, even if they didn't want to. And if you didn't pick loud enough or clear enough, someone would pick it for you or accuse you of being on the wrong one.
It truly made everything so much harder. The already hard daily life was compounded by this deep personal fracture. It wasn't just a war fought on battlefields, was it? It was fought in the kitchens, in the field, in the very hearts of community.
Absolutely. And that, I think, is a part of the story folks don't always hear. The internal war. The one that really ate at people.
You know, friend Cato, for all that division and hardship we just spoke about, it wasn't all despair. There were moments, weren't there? Moments when you felt a shift, a stirring of something new, a glimmer of hope.
Yeah, suppose so. Especially when the news came through. I remember the declaration. That was something. Felt like the whole world stopped just for a moment.
Oh, indeed. The reading of it especially. I wasn't there for the one in Philadelphia, but I heard tell of it. And then when it was read in town, in the public square, it was truly a profound experience. A hush fell, then a roar.
A roar. Yeah, I saw one of those readings myself. In a camp, actually. The parchment was all wrinkled, and the fellow reading it, his voice kept cracking. But the words just hung in the air. All men are created equal. Powerful stuff. Even if, well, even if it wasn't quite true for everyone.
A promise, perhaps, a seed planted. But for many in that moment, it was as if they could finally breathe a collective sigh, knowing what they were fighting for was now written, made official. It wasn't just whispers anymore, was it?
No, not whispers. It was a shout, and people, they really did rally around it. You could feel it. Like, even with everything falling apart, this declaration, it just put a fire in folks. A real patriotic fervor, as they say. Even me, I gotta admit, seeing those words, it made you think.
It was more than just a document. It was a unifying cry. After so much uncertainty, so much back and forth about whether to break from Britain or not, this was the definitive statement. It clarified the purpose of all that suffering, that disruption.
It did. It did. It gave people like a common enemy, finally, and a common goal. Before that, it was just this general unrest. But now it was us against them. And it wasn't just the declaration either. I mean, after the whole New York business, when Washington managed to get his men out, that also felt like a moment.
Oh, yes, General Washington's escape from New York. Everyone thought it was surely over for them. And then he pulls his men out seemingly against all odds. It felt like a miracle to some, didn't it? A sign that perhaps divine providence was on their side.
It felt like a second chance, I guess, after so much defeat and despair in that campaign. It kept the flame alive, you know? It made you think, well, maybe we can do this. It was a real boost to morale, even for those of us just trying to get by day to day.
Resilience, wouldn't you say? It showed the sheer resilience of the human spirit. To face such overwhelming odds, such personal and collective hardship, and yet to still find hope in these moments. The Declaration giving them a reason, and Washington's escape, well, that gave them continued belief.
Exactly. It wasn't just about winning battles, it was about, winning hearts, I suppose. Convincing people this fight was worth it, even when everything pointed to it being a losing cause. Those little sparks, they made a big difference.
And those sparks weren't just in the big declarations or the general's escapes. They were in the very air, weren't they? How people spoke, what they read, what they sang.
Oh, for sure. You couldn't, walk through a town without seeing something tacked up. Broadsides, they called them. Papers with big letters all about what the British were doing or what the Patriots were saying. Sometimes just fiery words.
Yes, and the pamphlets too. Little books, easily carried, passed from hand to hand. I remember some of them were quite persuasive. Even for those of us who prefer peace, they laid out the arguments in a way that felt logical almost, about rights, about justice.
Logical, maybe, but also pretty good at stirring up a fuss, too. I mean, they'd paint the king as this monster and us as these, righteous sufferers. It was, I guess, a way to make folks feel like they were part of something bigger, even if they were just working their farm.
And the sermons, especially in the churches. Preachers, some of them, would weave the fight for liberty into their very scripture readings. It gave the whole revolution a moral, almost a divine backing for many. It wasn't just a political struggle, but a righteous cause in the eyes of God.
Yeah, I heard some of that myself. It was it was powerful, especially if you were already on the fence, and made it feel well, like God himself was on our side, whatever our side was that day. And then there were the songs.
Oh, the songs, you couldn't escape them. Especially that one, Yankee Doodle.
Oh, Yankee Doodle. Yeah, that was funny actually. The British, they used to sing it to mock us, right? Called the simpletons, putting a feather in our cap and calling it macaroni.
Precisely. A bit of a jab at the American farmer, seemingly unsophisticated. But then something shifted, didn't it? We took it back.
We did. We just started singing it ourselves, but with pride. It became our song. Instead of being an insult, it was yeah, we're Yankee Doodles and we're fighting you. It was a good trick actually. Kind of clever, if you ask me.
It was more than clever. It was brilliant. It transformed a symbol of scorn into a unifying anthem. It gave people something to hum, something to march to, something that belonged to them collectively. It fostered a sense of shared identity, a common spirit.
Yeah, I guess so. All those broadsides, the sermons, the songs, it was like they were knitting us together, even when we were all so spread out and fighting for survival. It built a common story, I suppose.
A collective imagination, perhaps. It helped people see themselves as part of something larger than their village, larger than their own struggle. It helped forge a sense of American identity. A new kind of patriotism that wasn't just about hating the king, but about building something new.
Building something new. Yeah, even if that new thing was still finding its footing, you know? But those little things, the stories, the tunes, they definitely kept the idea alive.
So, if we look back at 1776, after all we've discussed, it really was, a crucible, wasn't it? For ordinary folk, I mean.
Yeah, a crucible. That's a good word for it, Miss Ruth. People were, well, they were going through it. Hunger, certainly. Fear, always. And disease. Oh, Lord, that was everywhere. You saw the destruction. You couldn't escape it.
No, you couldn't. It was it was an incredibly difficult year, fraught with peril at every turn for so many. And yet, amidst all that suffering, something else was being forged, wasn't it? A different kind of fire.
Yeah, I think so. It was like, even though everything was falling apart for so many, they were also somehow building something new together. This sense of belonging to something bigger than just their own troubles. This idea of being American.
Exactly. That deep sense of patriotism, born not just from declarations, but from shared hardship, from enduring the very same struggles, the same fears. It wasn't just, a political ideal, it was a lived experience of unity through adversity.
And that, I guess, is what made 1776 so pivotal, huh? It wasn't just the soldiers on the front lines. It was everyone, everywhere, kind of pushing through all that, forging this new identity that would, well, change everything.
Indeed, a foundation built on sacrifice and a deep, enduring hope for a truly free future.